All right, 3, 2, 1, and action. Welcome everyone to Having Lunch with Ben and Zach. It is neither lunch, and this is Zach, but not the Zach who I normally podcast with. So this is Zach Glabman. Maybe you want to take a minute to introduce yourself, and then we can get started.
That sounds good. My name's Zach Glabman. I'm a sophomore at WashU. I'm actually in Ben's business fraternity, so that's how we first met. My major is computational linguistics. I'm a second major in economics from Southern California. That's me.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, and then we will get to know Zach more as this episode continues on. Instead of lunch, I was in California in San Francisco this past weekend, and I got some of these chocolates, and they are delicious. So Zach and I are just gonna pick out a chocolate, and we'll try it. That will be our little nosh for the podcast, and then
Don't forget the tea, though.
And the tea, of course. I think the tea is something Zach and I had for every single episode so far, and he's feeling a bit under the weather. The other Zach, he was supposed to be here, but we figured that the podcast must go on, so we are recording anyway. So you want to pick one of these chocolates? There's a lot of science here between the circular ones, the rectangular ones.
Quantitative and also qualitative.
That's right. Yeah, there's some sprinkles on these.
This one looks pretty good.
Yeah, that one looks good. Honestly, there's two of those. I will be in it with you, my man. Let's cheers it. And then take a little bite. What is that? Is that coconut?
These are different things.
You have different things. Mine is
I
coconut.
have no idea what this is. It's
Is it
fantastic.
good? Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Oh, this is coconut filled. This is great. So the topic that we were actually just discussing right before we hit record was actually the coronavirus, which is very interesting. I'd say, first of all, I didn't really anticipate ever talking about, what's going on in our day-to-day politics or current events so much in this podcast, because I generally want the content to be mostly evergreen, but I actually think that talking about the coronavirus right now is really interesting for basically one reason. I think it's kind of binary how the coronavirus will be remembered. I think either it's going to be like a small little thing like Ebola, right, or SARS, where it's in people's memories for a couple of years, but 40 years down the road, nobody knows. Or it's going to be like a global pandemic where millions of people are infected and potentially hundreds of thousands or millions of people die, and our kids will know about it. And we are talking about this right on the precipice where there's still under 100,000 people infected, but Italy just broke out in the past 2 days, and Zach and I are supposed to be in Rome in 10 days from now?
Yeah.
So let's talk about it for a little bit.
Yeah, so I think the coronavirus has been a really interesting topic lately, for all of those reasons, of course, and for the fact that Ben and I are supposed to go, and my parents are, shaken and stirred. They don't really want to support that trip, but given that we've dropped $700-ish, right?
Yeah,
whatever
some
it is.
costs, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's some cost, but we're still thinking of going at this point. However, it seems like Milan and northern Italy has been really afflicted by this outbreak. However, it's coming and spreading everywhere. First case in Barcelona, first case in California, tons everywhere, kind of in the U.S. on every continent. Ben was telling me today, every continent is affected by coronavirus at this point. It's going to be weird to see where it goes. I was just reading an article actually before we pressed record about how the coronavirus manifests itself differently in every person. The symptoms are non-universal, so it seems like there's no way to perfectly protect against it.
Yeah.
I guess.
They
said vaccines are going to be very ineffective. So
we will see.
What are we going to do?
Yeah, I think almost the most interesting thing about it is that I wouldn't even know right now if I had coronavirus. Just because, I was in California 2 days ago. The entire state of California could blow up in coronavirus in the next 2 weeks, and because of that 2-week delay period, it causes a lot of trouble. Right. And the problem in Italy is once you lose that patient zero, and once you no longer know who the person that brought it is, you're in deep trouble, right? Because assume each person gets in close intimate contact with 10 people, or even 5, to be really conservative, right? If I get coronavirus and I get in contact with 5 people and they don't catch me, and then I infect those 5 people, and they each infect 5 people. Now there's 25. They each infect 5. You're at 125. Then you're at. It's like it's crazy, right? It's this exponential growth. So if you can't get it under control at the beginning, you're completely screwed. And coronavirus is infecting, on average, 2 people per person it gets to, which is like a lot higher than something like Ebola. Although Ebola had a higher kill rate. So I mean, there's a real chance we will see hundreds of millions of people infected. And that would be pretty wild to live through, and pretty wild to be podcasting about, right now. 2 months ago, no one knew what that word was. Like, there was nothing.
COVID-19 was.
Yeah, and now we're at the case where there's a real chance that millions and millions of people are going to get infected, and there's a real chance that we don't finish out the semester. Like, there's a non-zero chance of everything in this world, but when I say non-zero here, I mean, like, let's say greater than 1%. There's a greater than 1% chance that, like, WashU cancels physical classes, like something online. This is great. Yeah.
Pretty likely, actually.
Yeah, it's fairly likely. Yeah, I mean, I would maybe 10%. Like, I can't. It's hard for me to put an exact number on it because it really depends on when the coronavirus does come to the U.S. and then if its growth slows when it gets warmer outside, which some people predict that it will. But it's pretty wild that there's an actual chance that my second semester senior year will be spent doing like online classes. And there's a real chance that if we go to Italy, we'll be in quarantine, or we'll have to self-quarantine. It will. I almost think that it will just be worth the story if we do it.
I kind of agree. Interesting thing you mentioned. I totally forgot where I was going with this. Mm-hmm. I feel like some kid is statistically playing that game. Can you remember that?
Yeah.
And it's just slowly spreading. And the extent is going to be, I guess, ever unknown.
Yeah.
However, we kind of just have to move on and live our lives, which is another topic we were discussing.
Yeah.
Kind of this idea of COVID taking over the world, and a lot of people, just a lot of words being thrown around. Also, everything is yellow journalism at this point because we don't actually know anything. Like I guess your fear of coronavirus is a lot lower than like my parents, or I guess mine, because my parents are constantly in my ear.
Yeah.
But
maybe I'm just stupid. My risk aversion coefficient is really off.
But like, it's all what people say at this point, right? Yeah. And it's the same thing for anything that goes, right? If you want to get to more of those like deeper topics. Yeah, I very much want to get there. I want to say one more thing. I'm trying to think what you were what were we just talking about right before you just said about the risk aversion coefficients. We're talking about coronavirus, and then yellow journalism.
Right before the yellow journalism. It was on the tip of my tongue. Oh, plaguing. Yes. Oh, perfect. Amazing. My memory is gone to shit. There is a non-zero chance, maybe this time it is very close to zero, that like our entire universe has just been some simulation from like some higher level, and they're just like, oh, we wonder what happened. Like maybe they're dealing with some kind of epidemic and they're just running a billion simulations. And like one of them is like everything happens the way it does now, and then like, all right, introduce coronavirus like December 25th, like 2019, and see what happens. And like that very well could be the thing. And I think that's some like thinking about, and that's probably not the exact case, but just thinking about these types of simulations, I think helps me get like a lot of perspective. Like if I get like stressed out, well, it doesn't happen so much anymore, but like if I were to get stressed out about like midterms or just like stuff stupid, like what am I gonna do on like Thursday night or whatever, like it's just very easy to, or not very easy, but once you take the step back and have the perspective, like this all could be just like some simulation, and then it just makes everything in life a lot more digestible, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it also, on the other end of the spectrum, could make you a lot more down in the dumps about nothing matters. A little bit more nihilistic, I guess.
I would say,
depending on where you are.
I would say that my original encounter with existentialism did make me more nihilistic in a sense, because you can just read it and it could just be like, oh, like it's all meaningless. But I think a few really interesting articles, one by Thomas Nagel, or just reading The Myths of Sisyphus by Camus were really empowering in a way. Just like letting, and then the capstone of the course was reading Being in Nothingness by Sartre. And I think that it's actually empowering, like the concept of nothingness and of maybe there's no objective meaning, but you can go and shape your own meaning, was kind of empowering for me, because I was searching, right? You could ask my friends in my gap year in Israel or at the beginning of college, right? I was there searching for, like, what is the correct objective system? Like, how do we get to objective truth and this and that? And I think in a lot of ways, existentialist philosophy was a cool pathway to saying there's no objective truth, but that doesn't mean everything's meaningless. Well, it means everything's meaningless in a sense,
Right.
but everything could also be meaningful in a different sense, right? Like, my life is meaningful in the fact that we get to have a relationship, and that I have relationships with my family and with other people that are important. And yeah, maybe my life isn't meaningful in the span of, the history of America, and probably certainly not in the history of the world, and definitely not in the history of the universe, but who cares? Why do I need to do it, like, with respect to? I think the idea of having things in, like, a relative context just makes a lot more sense and makes things more digestible.
There's definitely a conversation to be had also about, this is a conversation we've definitely had before, more than once, about, the human experience and what it means to be able to have these relationships, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like, it is a unique thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I've told Ben many times that the one thing I've gotten, so I said I'm a sophomore, and he's a senior, so the one thing I've gotten out of college so far that I've noticed and that I gained from my freshman year mostly was the relationships I made. The academics, they come and go. I coined this term called academic bulimia, where there's a lot of classes that, like, you cram all this information in, but how much of it do you really retain? A lot of what you learn during your college experience is those, like, soft skills as well.
Yeah.
Right? And, hopefully gaining some of the academic skills, but at the same time, I think there's something to be said about locking yourself in your room versus going out and having a good time and hanging out with people and doing something like this on, like, a random Wednesday night.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing, and that's something that everyone should try and do in their life.
Yeah.
However it manifests. Like I told you many times, I spent my whole freshman spring semester trying to find something creative to do.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to get hot sauce, by the way, but it doesn't.
Zach makes hot sauce.
That's the thing.
Yeah. But we'll run that back another time. I'm gonna take one more of these chocolates. I'm just not sure which one of these looks the most appetizing.
What if we split? That would be.
I would do it. You want to split this long,
Sure.
dude? All right, let's do that.
Break it up. Where were we going with that?
Well, we can go anywhere. I wanted to open with coronavirus only because it was just what we were talking about.
Right.
But really good.
Actually, the whole conversation we're having about the human experience, I think,
let's do it.
goes on the path that I kind of wanted to talk about. Right before this, we were also on our walk over here. We walked over from campus. We were talking about advice you get in your life and how it really shapes your experience. That's the thing about the human experience, right? It's who do you listen to, what shapes and what motivates you to be who you are. I think there are a lot of ways that manifests itself. That's a word I've been saying a lot tonight, I guess, but everyone's experience is inherently different, right? And I've gone through my college experience so far motivated by the relationships I've been making. And I think a lot of the relationships I've made have informed me very much of who I am and who I want to be and what my impact can be to make sure that, shape my own experience.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think about taking in advice?
Yeah.
Experiencing the world for yourself?
Well, I like to think, and I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but I think I'm pretty easily influenced by my surroundings in a very particular way, right? Like, if I'm around a certain group of people, I could very easily get influenced by them. When I read a particular book, I oftentimes, like, my mindset will shift. I mean, sometimes I won't agree with what the book's saying and it'll shift the other way, but I think that the way that I think and my actions are pretty easily influenced by people around me, and I don't know if that's unique to me. I imagine to some extent it's not. But I think for that very reason, it's even more important to cultivate really strong relationships with people that I feel like I can learn from and, like, continue growing alongside them, share my ideas with them, hear their ideas, hear takes, things like that. And, like, I've really tended to avoid in my college career just, like, group settings with, like, people who are all like in one group that like are afraid to say like a certain thing, like that is not good for me. Like I just know that's not good for me because then it's like, well, then I'm like either afraid to say something or I don't want to speak out, or just like I find myself just feeling really averse to the concept of being around a group of people where there's not an open conversation. And I think something for me that's been important is spending a lot of one-on-one time with people, and people who, if I disagree with their ideas, I can say something and they can feel comfortable to say something with me. I think something that's like pretty harmful about getting like general group thinking advice is like it's very hard to speak out against it, right? Like for example, right, like in our business fraternity, a lot of people are going into like consulting, for example, right? And so if someone's in the room presenting, like here's why consulting is great, right? It's kind of hard to get up there and be like consulting is not great. It's just kind of hard to do that because then like you're like offending a lot of people and this and that. And so for me, my preference is just like I'll talk to people one-on-one and like talk in depth about it, right? Because if you say out loud in a group of people, oh, I think consulting is not great, even if you have a lot of nuance to your take and you say here are some good things, here are some bad things, the people who are doing consulting, and this is just an example, but the people who are doing consulting right away are just like on the defense, like enemy. Like this person is attacking like what I'm doing. And I think generally when you're in group settings and you know that there's a group of people that think a certain thing, it's just really, really hard to thread the nuance needle because you say one thing and it just like triggers something in their brain and bam. So I think like generally I've tried for like advice or just generally hanging out. I mean, of course, when I'm like trying to have like a good time, like especially if there's inebriating substances involved or if it's just like lighthearted conversation, like groups are fantastic. But I think generally for like these deeper conversations or anything where there's like real material advice being shared, I prefer one-on-one and maximum 3 people if everyone is kind of close.
I mean, there's 100 things I could say about that. I think it's funny that you mentioned that. Ben actually showed me a podcast a little bit ago called The Portal.
The Portal's fantastic.
The one episode I really, really liked about economic like preference falsification and its implications.
Timur Quran, right?
Game theory, Timur Quran. I mean, there's 100 different ways I could go that. That's the reason I like studying economics. I mentioned I'm also an econ major. Game theory is fascinating.
Yeah.
It comes in everywhere. It's every part of life, right? But that unique characteristic that is like people in consulting defending what they're doing and kind of their livelihood and what they know to be what it is, like what they know to be true, is not unique in that scenario.
Yeah.
You will find that everywhere. You'll find that with politics. You'll find it with deciding to go somewhere to go eat. If three people are in on something and you're like, you don't protest, I guess. This is the same exact reason I love studying linguistics. I think it's fascinating how we present information and how we are able to make decisions based on the way other people make decisions. And it's like, there's this really interesting concept about like linguistic register that I love to bring up in conversation about how my mom's a perfect example. My mom does this thing where she's with the family, she speaks in this like tone, I guess.
Yeah.
She's just like her normal self, like the way she speaks. But sometimes, like my brother actually does it too.
Yeah.
I don't know if I do it. I think it's something that you don't know for sure. You lose track and can't recognize it after a while. But you might change the way you speak or change your tone or whatever else around certain people. Yeah. So I would say the most tangible way to see this is like with grandparents, for instance. You're not going to be like F this, F that, cussing and all this other stuff. It's like changing kind of who you would be in a different setting to match a certain other setting. It's the same thing.
It's
with
subconscious.
Preference falsification. It's more like personality falsification, but falsification
Oh.
sounds like such a strong
Wow.
word.
So this is such a juicy idea. I want to dedicate as much as the rest of the podcast to it. If you're down, I want to say one more idea before we jump into it, just because I'm going to forget it.
Go right ahead.
But keep this on your mind, yeah? Okay. The idea I was thinking about, as it related to the topic we were talking about before, right, like game theory, but like even before that, is think about people getting defensive, right? Like when I say to a person who maybe like hasn't thought so much about philosophy, like you don't have free will, like right away they're just like, yes, I do. Like, I could jump right now. Like, I could like do this. I could do that. And like that is what their mind is racing to. But I think it's still recording. I think, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Let me check.
This works. The screen just went off.
Yeah, it's still recording.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's still recording. So like,
I never pressed the record button.
That would have been okay too. But with free will, right? People will like right away. Their instinct is like, yes, I do. I have free will. This and that. But like in a real sense, like they just can't listen. They're not open to listening to the nuance or the sense in which they don't have free will because they're right away defensive. But if I was able to present it to them, I could be like, right, like let's look at like a fly, right? Like their code is basically if light, then go there, else go other direction, right? Like that. Their brain is basically it's basically running that kind of code. And our brains, I mean, there could be a lot of steps in between, but our brains are basically running a much more complex and deeper version of that code, something most similar, I would say, to like a deep neural net. And yeah, I mean, in a real way. And I think actually the one thing that I think is most interesting, that's, you know, obviously the hard thing to explain, our sense of consciousness, is the fact that we have the ability to abstract and recognize that we're in this thought pattern. Like, I can recognize that I just have, like, certain instinct, like, just, like, a sound happens, like, I just jump. Like, it's clear to me that there's at least a part of my brain that's fully running if then, else statements, right?
We should talk about this more often.
Yeah.
I could talk about this particular topic for literally hours.
Yeah.
We should get a whiteboard, right?
A whiteboard.
Topics that we've been discussing, and then try and get to. We could sit here for days.
Honestly, my new idea. I will start this in every podcast after this one. Just to have like a notebook of stuff. If I have a thought that pops into my mind, like while the other person is talking.
Yeah.
Because like when you were just talking, like I'm focusing on your thing. I'm like, oh shit, what am I going to say?
Yeah. Right.
So okay, but I want to get back to your topic before because I stole your thunder.
Well, not at all. I was actually going to say we could go in a new direction, but at the same time, all of this ties together. Everything that I think that we talk about, in some way is related. In some small instance. This is okay. I'm very much in the opinion. This is a different conversation that I'm only going to briefly touch upon, but we can have another time. I'm in the opinion you can have a conversation with anyone about anything. Yeah. And as long as they, as much as you, are willing to enter into this conversation and be a part of this discourse, you can find something that either you have in common, someone is interested in hearing about, or something else. You, no matter what, can relate anything to what you're interested in. Yeah. Or in some capacity, put something on a table and be like, oh, you know, the other person takes it and looks at it and goes, oh,
here's my take on it.
There's something about this that, you know, I can resonate with. And I think that's just fascinating. Before we talk about that whole economic kind of paradox of choice, the whole learning and all this other thing, I would like to, you know, to the camera, of course, but also to you, I would say this is exactly what my major is. Yeah. Everything you just said. Yeah. And I'm going to preface it by saying I just spent the last 2 years or year and a half of college thinking I wanted to major in something because I don't know why, because it correlated to what I needed to do as a job, or because I can't tell you why I thought I needed to do this thing or had this grand vision to do this thing. So to give a little background, I started out in college in arts and sciences. We have arts and sciences, the business school, engineering, art school, and architecture, I guess. But technically, it doesn't matter. Really thought it was my goal and my purpose of college to switch to business school, major in finance, so that I was properly prepared to work in finance. And it took me a really long time to realize you don't need to do that. And I'm probably at some point going to write like you were a Medium type blog and stuff. I want to write something about that, just like an open message to college students. Yeah. And saying like, look, your major doesn't matter. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Yeah. And like, kind of go into my steps and my path of realizations that like, I finally found something that interests me in studying. Yeah. And I'm running with it. I don't really care, but I'm gonna run with it. If I don't have a job in 3 years, then I guess shame on me. But who cares?
I think it's a really noble thing to say, and the thing about writing an open letter to college, I mean, like my maybe central mission in terms of what I'm doing outside of just like enjoying my life and trying to enrich my life is trying to talk to the administrators at this school, like the people on the board, the deans of the different schools, the provosts, whoever it is, and just be like, because the incentives are all wrong, right? Like the people who are in school as students and the people who are working here as administrators view all of this stuff as of the utmost importance because this is their lives. Yeah. So of course they view these things of the utmost importance, and so they stress the wrong types of things because there's this like self-fulfilling cycle of administrators believing that they need to encourage students to do the finance major so that they can get jobs in finance. So therefore, students are like, we need to do the finance major in order to get jobs in finance, and there's this whole crazy pathway. And the whole time, no one is actually going in and seeing if the finance major is going to prepare people for finance, because the students don't know what you actually need for finance until they're seniors. And by the time they're seniors, they don't give a shit what's being taught in the earlier classes. And the administrators have never they've never had real jobs for the most part outside of finance. And the professors got PhDs in finance 20 or 30 years ago and are just reusing the same slide decks that were made 20 or 30 years ago. And so there's no incentive for anyone in the system to come in and just like burst this bubble and just be like, why is everyone doing what they're doing? Like if you do a straw poll, and something I'm working on now is doing the senior survey for the university, because like just from my anecdotal results, almost no one that's doing the finance major right now likes the major, and nobody thinks that the major is preparing them for their jobs. So what is the purpose of the finance major, right? Like, I think it's kind of right. Either you're going to say, this major is for people interested in finance. We're going to make it like super interesting. It's going to be really like lots of cool cases. People are going to learn cool stuff. It's going to be great. Or you're going to say, this major is like, we're going to teach you all the hard skills you need to succeed in finance. But right now, the major is neither of them. And no one in the system has the right incentive to expose that.
You bring up a lot of very interesting topics, I guess, specific topics about kind of a lot of what I just mentioned.
Yeah.
I like to wrap it all up into this idea and this notion of priority structure.
Okay.
Bring it back to this.
Yeah.
I didn't finish my thought about it.
Yeah.
I kind of just got
lots of thoughts.
I do this thing where everything is a tangent and you just get lost and you're like, I don't know.
That's how this works.
But then you just kind of move forward. Yeah. And like bring it back real quick. We'll get to the priority structure. I think that's one of the probably the biggest ways I operate on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Priority structure and thinking about like anyway, one sec. So my major is tentatively called computational linguistics. WashU has these amazing abilities to be just like so flexible in your education. One of the things that prevented me from pursuing that great goal was my internship last summer, my experience studying abroad. All of this kind of came together to help me realize that you don't really need to study it to do it.
Yeah.
And you can learn anything you want just by trying.
Yeah.
However, I read this textbook about neural nets and deep learning.
Yeah.
And I was just fascinated. Like, I have never been more excited about learning something than you don't know you're excited about learning something so you can like tear through a textbook.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And like, I just haven't been that genuinely excited about something in a long time.
I
have been genuinely excited about a lot of things. Like, I really love to learn languages. That's always been a thing. That's why I'm studying linguistics. I originally, before I was going to switch to the business school or whatever, I was an econ and linguistics double major, minoring in computer science. And one thing I realized is that you can actually create your own major at WashU. Not many people know that, and not many people have ever done it. Arts and sciences is very strict about what they approve and what they don't approve. I was actually in the process of getting my major approved in arts and sciences. I drew this whole draft out for a major that combines computer science, linguistics, philosophy, and math under one. I know it's a lot of things in one.
Sounds pretty ideal.
It is essentially touching upon the intersect of human and artificial systems in the context of communication, learnability, cognition, and I guess choice, the economics of choice. Obviously, the philosophy component comes in with ethics and symbolic logic and the logic of choice, all this stuff. But I couldn't find a way really to like narrow it down that much because I came to college like I want to study everything, but also you got to study one thing.
Yeah.
But my goal of this major is to be able to set some sort of legacy to show other people that you can combine your interests into this one thing and really just go in.
Yeah.
At the same time that you're studying everything. Because I think computational linguistics and natural language processing has implications anywhere and everywhere
Yeah.
that you want. Think Siri, Alexa, think data processing, semantic and sentiment analysis,
Yeah.
or quantitative trading, if that's really your jam. Go for
Yeah.
it. And so that's why I wanted to create a major, but really it brings back to this notion of priority structure also. Kind of learning to log and keep your priorities and how you want to move forward with your education and move forward with where you want to go in life. I thought this would be the best way to do that. And WashU has a lot of great resources. I don't know who's going to be watching this, if anyone ever, but if you're a WashU student, do what you want. We can talk about that for a long time.
But I think less applicable directly to WashU students, but more to anyone. Like you can. It's cliche, but like you can do anything, right? We have the internet, and everything ever is accessible at our fingertips. You were talking about like being like tearing through a textbook. Like I just started taking this this like European Conquest of the Americas class, and I just like was amazed by it. I tore through like 3 textbooks this semester. I just like want to know every interaction of like which Spanish sailor like came to which area, like what their interaction was like with these different tribes. Like it's so fascinating to me, and I just love it. And it's something that I guess in retrospect I would be like, yeah, I guess I would enjoy this. But like sometimes it just gets in front of you and you really like it. And then in terms of the neural network stuff, I think I was telling you about the fintech class I'm in right now. Like I had no exposure to coding neural networks before, and we just started doing it in class, and it just made a lot of sense, and also was just like so cool. Just like so cool. Like wow, like this is how this works. Like now I understand. Like before, if you would have told me, here I'm gonna draw like a bunch of numbers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. I'm gonna give it to a computer, and it's gonna say which one's 1 and give what probability. Like I would have been like,
data set?
Yeah, and it goes
That's like the one.
Convolution layer, max pool, all this different stuff, and I'm just like, okay, I have no clue how that would happen. Like some like coder or whatever would figure it out, and now I'm just like, oh, like I understand how that happens. And I'm like, oh, like if you just like expand the neural net like to make a few more layers, then like this is what happens. If you make it wider, this is what happens. I'm just like, wow, like that makes a lot of sense. Or with cryptocurrency, like we just started, like I was like, oh, like I have a pretty good idea of like how cryptocurrency works. Like I understand like a lot of the economics of it, but I didn't understand the back end. And then just like we were just like, all right, like now we're just gonna mine off a blockchain, and we just started coding, and then we just like started mining off a blockchain. And I was just like, whoa, like we were just like mining blocks, and then we'd like have the next hash, and we just like mine it, and we had the longest chain, and then we did an exercise to like hack it. I was like, oh, like now I actually understand how these things work, and it was something that I thought was so unattainable for someone like me with not such an advanced coding background. And I think that for a lot of things, it's really not so hard to learn about them. If you're interested in them, just like read a couple papers and then just like start doing it yourself, and you'll just know how to do it. And that's the whole game.
Right.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I did not know that fintech class did all that stuff.
It's fantastic.
I really wish I could have taken it.
Yeah, it's not too late.
Yeah.
It's the first and only good finance class I've taken at WashU.
Maybe I'll hop in at some point. That's one of the reasons I'm glad I have 4 semesters. I think I'm glad I have 4 semesters left.
Yeah.
I don't have to jump out and be an adult quite yet, but
yeah.
I don't know. Where was I going with that?
You were talking about priority structures.
Yeah. All of those things I resonate with a lot. I had to stop and think for a second.
Yeah.
You mentioned actually just now about just reading a paper and knowing something.
Yeah.
So where I'm interested in linguistics and how it applies to computer science is kind of the border, and you touched upon this earlier without realizing it, I think.
Okay.
The border of where AI and where computer intelligence goes is at pragmatic understanding of language, discourse modeling.
Yeah.
And this is where my particular interest in linguistic theory is. At this point, the way I describe my major to like potential employers or whoever even that's interested in asking me more about it is I'm trying to bridge a gap between theoretical linguistic meaning and actual applicational knowledge.
Yeah.
Computers can be applied to anything, any scenario, and I think we can do anything with the knowledge that we bring to the table. We just have to know and be able to put that knowledge to the right test.
Yeah.
A lot of where the borders are in this idea of pragmatic and semantic meaning coming together to form an understanding of a situation, a scenario.
Yeah.
So this thing about what you said with, I forget what it was exactly. It was something way earlier, but it made me think about this idea of neurosymbolic AI as the future. Stanford actually has a major program that I found out after I had this idea to create a major. Is very, very similar to what I just created.
Mm-hmm.
It's called symbolic systems, and they focus particularly with this human AI interaction on like symbolic logic and systems in how computers interpret situations. So like applying this idea of self-attention to a neural network such that it will, I guess, be able to combine this intense computation with something as simple as like an easy scenario to understand. So, so where the border is right now, I got lost.
I want to make a quick definition for everyone before you continue. I think one of the things that is most confused in the world is like, what is the definition of AI? Like, what is artificial intelligence?
Let's talk about that.
So I was gonna prompt a quick definition and then allow you to go quicker. So I think AI, like traditionally, is people talk about it. It's like the types of computations that used to be reserved for only humans, but like now computers can do them. The problem with that, it's a good definition generally. The problem with it is it's a constantly evolving definition, right? Because like AI, like in some ways, might have been like simple things like the calculator that does like the plus button, right? Like, is that an AI? I guess it is an AI under that definition, but it doesn't really seem like the AI that we're trying to talk about. And the frontier of AI, it keeps pushing. I think what people are talking about now are like highly specific AIs, AI systems that can do quite advanced things. And the way I would like to frame it is, and you can tell me if you disagree, but I think AI requires like 3 core elements. So the first would be domain expertise, right? This is like the human element that's important in designing AI, right? The AI needs to be structured such that it can like take in these inputs and then give outputs that are relevant, right? You could have unstructured AIs, that do unsupervised learning, but they're extremely likely to not give the types of answers that you want. So you need to have real domain experts who can come in and say like, these are the types of things that we are looking for, and then structure the AI in that way. The second thing is data generation capabilities, right? You need to have more and more data flowing in order to be able to continuously train, update models, right? Or like you could have reinforcement learning systems like AlphaGo, which is able to like create its own models by like playing against itself and getting better and better. But the second thing you need is data generation capabilities. And then the third thing is you just need general purpose machine learning. And those are like tools that are honestly basically commoditized right now, which is pretty fucking insane. That literally you can just go online and get machine learning tools. But in order to do something useful, you have to have useful data and you have to have domain expertise. But the useful data is kind of hard to acquire because like it gives, like in business, for example, it gives incumbents a really big advantage because they have lots of data. But like domain expertise, again, like it doesn't take it's like, oh shit, like you need 10,000 hours to be an expert. It's just not true. I mean, to be some level of an expert, yes, but there's diminishing marginal returns on like, on expertise. Yeah, there's diminishing marginal returns in everything, but like, you can be a somewhat expert in like a whole host of things if you just like spend a lot of time just like absorbing content, right? Like listening to podcasts, having interesting conversations, reading books, reading articles on like a number of different topics. You can get like some level of domain expertise in all these places. So what's interesting to me, and then I'll let you continue, is like when general intelligence arises, or the ways in which it will arise, and how that relates to like the pathway we're going towards, right? Like right now we have like really specific AIs that are like specifically structured for these niche domains, and they're really good at it, but they can't do something else, right? Like I could create my neural network that could see everything, see if it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but if I showed a picture of a cat, and ask if it's a cat or a dog, you have no fucking clue, right? If you show the cat dog, I mean, now Google has stuff that could do both, but it's still not fully there generally, right? It doesn't have the context. So I think with that, maybe you can continue talking about the.
No,
the
I think that is precisely the reason I was having difficulty putting into words that I'm trying to say. With Stanford, with the main.
Yeah. Sometimes just definitions are.
Well, not only that, but also there's so many different types of AI.
Yeah.
Where am I going with this again? I just totally lost my thought.
You're good. Different types of AI.
This whole idea of artificial intelligence itself.
Yeah.
It comes from so many different domains, like you said. The way I kind of go about describing it is think about Alan Turing, if you've ever seen the information.
Yeah. Imitation game. Yeah. Good one.
The Turing test is the test applied to computer or whatever it may be to see if it's a human.
Yeah.
Something like that. I would say that's probably at its core what really AI and what it is. Where I was going with the limits of AI and machine learning.
Do you want to define Turing test?
Yes. So a Turing test, I guess, like I said, the test we apply to a computer to see if, like a human, it is able to do similar human things. I guess I don't really know how to explain it better than that.
Yeah, it's trying to see if the computer. I was gonna connect it to I was gonna connect it to consciousness and be like the ability to abstract back and be like, oh, my system is I hear noise, I react, or something like that. To be able to step back and have that understanding. But anyway, continue. Perfect.
Thought.
Go.
So with this idea of machine learning and AI are inherently hand in hand. Ben, you've been talking about this theme of machine learning in all these different contexts, and it's coming about in more commercially as well, business and in software and XYZ other thing, ag tech, whatever else it may be. Machine learning to optimize certain tasks. So machine learning is applied to a specific domain knowledge to create this intelligent system that can learn. I guess in a way, it's machine learning is a very salient topic for the major area.
Yeah.
It's supposed to model how we learn. It's supposed to model the human brain and model how we learn from a scenario to do a certain thing. But we're just not there yet. And that's where I was going kind of with the borders and with the limits of AI. Because when you talk about AI, you have to talk about the limits of AI.
Yeah.
The movie I, Robot with Will Smith. Is that going to be our reality in 5 years? Maybe. Maybe not.
I didn't see that movie.
Oh, okay. It's all of these robots.
Yeah. Oh, you're good.
It's this movie where robots are sentient.
Yeah.
And suddenly, there's such a normal part of daily life that one day they're just people, and then they take a leave, and then that's
So I mean, we're a little bit of a ways. We're a little bit of a ways away. Right now, as you were saying, our ML, our machine learning capabilities, all they can do right now is they can do really highly advanced pattern recognition and then make predictions about the future that the world will look the same way that it did in the past. That's what machine learning system could do. I think what's interesting is how I like to think about intelligence, right? I think there's multiple types of intelligences, but I think that all of them are around the concept of pattern recognition, right? All sorts of different pattern recognition, right? There's IQ, you can do visual pattern recognitions. You can do spatial pattern recognitions. A lot of that has to do with sports, right? Ability to just some people just have great vision for basketball or football, just can make great passes and just see the defense. Other people have musical intelligences. They can just see the patterns in their head, just they know what the different sounds are going to be. Other people just have great pattern recognitions for connecting different intuitions from one field to another, and are just quick and agile in their mental thinking abilities. So I think it's interesting to take that concept of intelligence, just to think about it in terms of
it's a perfect
machine.
Yeah. Well, sorry.
Go.
I would say it's a perfect analogy between artificial intelligence and intelligence itself.
Yeah.
There's human intelligence.
Yeah.
There's artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence as a concept is us applying this idea of something being able to learn and become more intelligent.
Yeah.
As we define intelligence.
Yeah. But then if we throw a cat at it, a picture of a cat, it won't know what to do.
But as AI kind of evolves and as machine learning models evolve, there are so many different ways and different improvements that are being made in the last couple of years that are changing it. So I was talking about this idea of neurosymbolic AI, and I'll talk about that in a sec, but there's this quick tangent that I wanted to mention if anyone's curious, anyone watching.
Yeah.
Right now, there's this idea of something called the neuroevolutionary augmenting topology.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. I want to talk about this after. Yeah.
And so if you look that up on YouTube, you'll find a video of someone playing Mario and it teaching itself how to best beat the level in the shortest amount of ways, or in the shortest amount of steps, by creating its own neural network. So that's an AI that evolves to create its own neural network to do exactly what. It's almost like the Excel solver. We were talking about this because of financial modeling. It's trying to like figure out what it needs to do based on one or two things, and then create a neural net to best do that.
Can I pause one more time just to make another quick definition?
Right.
So like some of the first examples of, because we've been talking about neural nets, so maybe some people are watching this and are lost. But no, it's totally. I just recognize it myself. I think like a really salient example. The Mario game is good, and this is gonna hopefully feed right into that.
Visually,
the game of Pac-Man, right? So like one of the earliest like systems was solving the game of Pac-Man, and basically what the architecture did, right? The domain expert basically set it up like every single position that the Pac-Man was in. They had it run a bunch of different simulations, right? Like the simulation if the Pac-Man goes down when they're at point X. Simulation when the Pac-Man goes up. The simulation when the Pac-Man goes right, goes left, right? They set it up in that way, and then it could run through all the different simulations and then figure out which one was best and then go to the next one. And basically, and it's super high-scale hardware and great software, like a really efficient code, such that it could just like beat the game of Pac-Man. I think this Mario thing is the same type of way, except it's the computer figuring out how to set up that architecture on its own, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right? So I hope that follows.
Yeah, and so before I get into the idea of neurosymbolic, again, all these terms, but NEAT is kind of an algorithm developed to model how we evolve also. How our intelligence evolves. So over time, at one point, contrary to some beliefs, we evolved from apes. Right? And so our mental capacity or our cognitive capacity kind of evolved in the same sense. So we start from a square one, right? And we need to live, we need to continue living, we need to find food, we need to find shelter or water, whatever else. There are certain things that we need to survive, and we will do that in order to survive. And that's how we evolve. And that's how they designed this architecture. And so I just think that's so fascinating. But moving towards this idea of a pragmatic barrier, I was talking about this idea.
I really like that idea of the NEAT thing.
I think it's so fascinating. Like where linguistics comes in. I mentioned earlier I'm a big language guy. Always been super fascinated about language acquisition and how we learn and how we are able to acquire a different language, a different way of conceiving the world, etc. And before I get into that, I would like to say, like I've told you this, the reason I study linguistics primarily is, math, physics, we have everything that we're able to describe the physical world with, right? But linguistics is a way that we are able to describe the metaphysical world.
Yes. So I'm gonna get a drink. You wanna truly?
Can I get a water?
Yeah, I'll get you water.
Yeah.
Continue talking now.
Okay. So that's why I study linguistics, but on the same front, I guess moving into computational linguistics, with how linguistics can apply to AI and machine learning. This idea of like pragmatic enrichment of a situation. So the three areas I'm super fascinated with in linguistics. Linguistics itself is the study of language. Not
that's
how many languages
good definition.
one speaks. So this is another definition for you, since I'm forgetting to do that. Linguistics breaks down.
If my co-host Zach was here, he would be all. He's always like, oh, don't jump to these terms, because it's true, because it makes it a lot easier to just jump when you use like fancy terms.
When you presuppose a knowledge. Presupposition is a linguistics term. It's like you presuppose a knowledge that you come into a discourse with. Okay, let me define linguistics first. Linguistics is the study of language at its core. It breaks down into 6 subcategories. Phonetics, phonology, which are essentially the sounds and the sounds that you make that combine into language production. So like phonetic and phonology, like phonetic analysis is done with like Alexa and Siri to derive text from that. So like that's a thing, that's an application. There's also syntax, semantics, and pragmatics, which are the 3 domains that I'm super fascinated with. And there's also morphology, which is another domain that I would say directly correlates to really computational elements of linguistics.
Yeah.
And so I'm really fascinated with the three that I mentioned a second ago, and I'll talk about those more. Syntax is really the structure. Think about structure of language. If you've ever seen like a language tree, a model of how sentences come together to form meaning.
Yeah.
And you can derive semantic meaning from that syntax. Semantic being how words literally mean in context with each other. Pragmatics and semantics are two sides of the same coin for that same sense. So pragmatics is literal and non-literal meaning that we can derive from context.
Yeah.
But like enriched, is to put it lightly. So and morphology is really just like the different particles that come together to form words. So like an adverb is ly in English, essentially. That's morphology. Yeah. That's a morpheme.
Yeah.
Or I guess a morph. Yeah. Anyway, that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But I'm in this class right now that I'm kind of designing. I'm working with a professor directly who's an expert in syntax, and we're touching upon the interface of syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. So it's like not designing the course, but it's called Ling 500. It's an independent study that I'm in right now. And so what the class really is we're looking more and more deeply into how computation can apply in the specific domain of semantics, pragmatics, and syntax.
Yeah.
I recently read this paper, and just bringing it back to the idea of priority structure, of discourse structure. Pragmatics is very, very much focused on the idea of a discourse model and how we come into a conversation. I could talk about linguistics for years and years and years. And I definitely want to talk about your thing, like the thing we were just talking about with artificial intelligence and
well, I
forget what you were about to mention. But what I will say with this last thing, after defining those terms, the barriers of where AI and where computers are is in this pragmatic understanding of a discourse model. So we can derive this literal semantic meaning. And I would say this is most analogous to where computers are.
Yeah.
Is they see something and that's what it means.
Yeah.
They aren't able to process tone, focus, and so this paper I recently read for this class talked about all of these things.
Although tone, they are now getting able to do.
They're working on it. So that's where the neural networks come in.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm going to get to with kind of where the computational linguistics element comes in as well, is that, this paper I read about how we form discourse, how we form this common ground and this basic notion of an information structure that we can derive from a conversation or a discourse is the same sort of setup and structure that a computer would have.
Yeah, in fact, so I'll take just another quick step back just to define something.
I'm going to end that there,
okay.
But you feel free
just
to
I want to
that
define one quick thing. So when we're talking about, let's say, is this something I would not have been able to understand probably 2 months ago? If you're talking about a computer system, like an artificial intelligence system, that's going to try and go about listen to phone calls with the CEO shareholder phone call and be able to get tone and intonation from that and be able to understand like patterns of words and things like that, the way you have to structure it is you have to feed it tons of data, and then you have to build a domain structure such that it would group different words and phrases and maybe speed or you could measure the different factors that count in tone, make different groupings, and then you have an output sample, right? Because you're training the data. You have like you can use like a cross entropy function, which basically I'll define that. What that basically is, what that does is
like a sigmoid.
Well, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
So okay, I'll take one more step back. You would have like your function would finish with you'd have all your data, right? You run it through the program, and it would print out. You finish with a soft max. So basically, print out the percent chance that like each word or phrase is a part of.
You're normalizing an input to get an output, and you put it through a series of functions.
Yeah.
To kind of put it through this range as to where the computer can figure out in this range it's this, and pretty much binarily, is that a word?
Yeah.
Binarily get the result that it needs.
Yeah. So like let's say you had 10 phrases. That's a really good explanation. Let's say you had like 10 phrases. It would group them, and then you would say like, is this phrase a positive thing, and it would give each of them a percent. The softmax function would give each of them a percent chance, and then you put that through a cross entropy function, which would basically make really low chances really high numbers, and make really high chances very low numbers, and then you just run a minimize function and you sort it, and you basically you'll then get like really small values for things that are almost certainly positive in nature, and really large values for things that are very negative in nature. And so you might find, after running through thousands of investor calls, that when I think you might have just paused it, or did you just pause? No, still running. After thousands of investor calls, you might find that when a CEO says the phrase "things are looking up next quarter," you might actually find that when you take all this output data and match it up against the next quarter stock performance, you might actually find that means the stock is going down next quarter. But if they say, like, where we are waiting and seeing, that might mean something, right? Like you just will be able to use input data that you would think, how could this be made into anything? But with really good domain experts, like someone like Zach, or people who have better understandings of tone or voice quality or language syntax, you'd be able to create a really specific domain structure that you could feed this data through, put it through the general machine learning tools, and then pop out this output.
I'm honored you think I'm a domain expert.
More so than I would be, I would say. But anyway, something I'm interested in engaging with you on is, so you were talking about the Mario game, right? And how it kind of is self-opted. All right, perfect. Well, let's finish with this topic.
Yeah.
Great song, by the way.
Yeah. This is my playlist in the background.
If people don't have Back Pocket by Wolfpack, it's a great song.
I think it's a great song. This is the playlist I listen to all the time.
Yeah.
I talk about music for a long time too, but
music is good. But okay, so I'll get to this topic and we'll close on this. So I like to think about the development of consciousness a lot.
We can do another podcast.
Yeah, we definitely can and should. And I like to think a lot about development of consciousness as it relates to the formation of language. But something that I hadn't really thought about was like what you were saying just before, with like the Mario game that was like self-optimizing for like survival, basically, and how kind of our brains are doing that as well. And I wonder if you apply that to like all sorts of things, and like I wonder if our propensity for religion as a species has like a similar, if that's a good way to explain the similar type of thing, right? Like the thing I will say right now is,
are we just a neat AI?
Are we a neat AI where like religion was a super useful thing for us? I think like it might be the case.
And my neural network might be a little bit different than yours.
Yeah. But as a species, is our species as a whole like wired like this neat AI to have?
Think of the synapse that connects your last note with your religion note is weighted slightly more. Anyway, continue.
Religion note. Anyway, I just think it's an interesting topic, and given that I have to leave in a couple minutes, we could wrap up now or shortly. But I just think, I'm not sure if I'm going somewhere concrete. I just think a lot about how it is that we developed as a species the way that we did. And I think that learning about neural networks has been super helpful, and something that I know I want to learn more about. And one of the reasons I always love chatting with you is linguistics is a really, really cool and powerful tool to understanding the way that our brain structures developed in the way that they did, and how that affects how our brains work today.
Yeah. Primarily what turned me on to linguistics was this idea of language acquisition. And I look to Noam Chomsky as a big inspiration with all of his theories, and really looking into how human cognition works.
Yeah.
Looking forward into this idea of, I loved learning languages. Would it necessarily translate for someone else who loved learning languages to love linguistics? Maybe not.
Yeah.
But I think the way I say linguistics is really interesting to learn about is it has so many, not only does it have so many applications, but you can connect it to anything. Communication, cognition, human interaction, structure. I mean, it's like a scientific study so much as it is like a soft study.
Yeah.
It's like a hard versus soft skill. I would say it perfectly combined for me. I was doing more logic and math in my linguistics classes than I was in my comp sci classes for a little bit.
Yeah.
But so a very interesting topic, and probably the reason and the legacy I want to have on WashU with this newly created major is this concept of natural language processing in artificial intelligence and neural network and machine learning is
I remember what I was going to say.
Unbelievably important for the future of AI. And very, very quickly, defining that idea of neurosymbolic AI, totally forgot to do that. Weak AI, okay, I'm not even gonna go there. Look up weak AI if you're interested in like weak versus strong AI, and there's like 100 different like definitions. Something that's interesting, very quickly, is that when there's this new theme and this new topic about something, everyone's gonna come up with like 100 different vocab words and buzzwords that like don't mean anything or mean the same thing, and like it's very, very easy to get lost. Like I can't even tell you, I'm getting lost in my own thoughts, like stepping over one another and whatever else. But so neurosymbolic AI for this I guess context would be this idea of jumping to the next step. Where are we going, and where are we right now? Like I have been trying to get to and trying to somehow snake through there with this pragmatic and linguistic enrichment of computer science and machine learning models. It comes in with like this common sense.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
So
perfect. Yeah.
Information structure and this idea of a common ground and this presupposed knowledge is just not there with a computer. When we input a dictionary or a corpus data of like corpus being like a storage of data as a definition, I guess. You know, like we have this database of like stuff that we can put in. That's our input data. You know, your MNIST data set. The MNIST data set is what Ben was talking about earlier with the definition of like you put in a number and the computer is able to put it through a neural net and understand that it's a 1, it's a 2, it's a 3, whatever.
And the application would be for like the U.S. Postal Service, right? To eliminate all people reading, like you just put it in, it just reads the numbers and it sends it to the right zip code.
Exactly.
And the right address.
So there's things like that. This idea of neurosymbolic AI jumps a step further because the limits of that kind of artificial intelligence is it needs to be for specific, what did you say? Domain knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. So that type of machine learning comes with a lot of boundaries. Right. It completely lacks this idea of common sense. And I think the perfect analogy and the perfect example for something to explain something like this would be a chatbot. Chatbots on websites, for instance, that are like a virtual assistant or a virtual helper, or even Siri. You know, bring up your phone right now, say, "Hey Siri," and then whatever it is, say something, and then if you use in an anaphora, so like a pronominal reference to something, so like he, she, it, they, whatever. Simple chatbots and simple AI will. This is just like an example, like a very specific example that like the computer is lacking in this realm. It doesn't have referential anaphoric capabilities where it's able to go back to a previously referenced pronoun, connect it with this new pronoun. Let's say
because it's in the same line. It's in the same line.
If I'm talking about Ben and Zach having lunch, and then you say he, or something, something as simple as that. It doesn't know which he it is.
Yeah, because even if by context you saying it would be obvious to me. I think in a similar way, like what I think I was driving at before was, right, you have the computer program, and we need to literally code in for them to be able to understand the investor call, we need to code it, we have to import this entire dictionary, we need to code in all of these metrics about speed and tone and all of this different stuff. But if I were just talking to you, you would so automatically be able to get how my tone, if I have an exclamation, if I'm really excited, I'm saying this, right, I'm talking really fast, this and that, like your brain just automatically processes that and can understand, right, the context that's happening behind that. But in order for us to program a computer to extract it, right, the chatbots or Siri, you need to have such specific, right now, domain expertise such that they will be able to pick up on these small things. And it's so interesting. I think the connection I was looking for before, I ended up fumbling my words, but what's cool is that if our brains are like Neat in Mario, they basically optimized over millions of years of evolution to create such amazing neural nets that when you talk and you have sarcasm or a different tone or a different speed, we automatically can process it and just understand what that's saying or what my hand motions are saying.
Yeah.
We basically
social cues.
Yeah, social
Does not
cues. But the concept of social cues and common sense, right, that you were talking about, the concept of social cues
is pragmatic enrichment.
Yeah, it's pragmatic enrichment, and it's something that would be so easily explained by like a neat system evolving over millions of years, right? Like that's how we are able to just like understand social cues where like a computer would never be able to.
Very quickly, simple examples of like sarcasm being difficult for a computer to understand would be, I mean, slang. Yes, not a perfect example, but whatever. Like,
sarcasm is a really good example.
Exactly. Like inflecting it in a certain way where like you say something that if you just had the text, you wouldn't be able to understand. Like the problem when you're texting your mom or something, you're trying to make a joke, or not your mom. I don't know why I said that.
Yeah.
But like
texting anyone.
Anyone. And you try and say something to be funny, and it just doesn't quite come across in the same way.
Yeah.
You can't get tone, you can't get sarcasm.
Yeah.
You can't get it just by having the text.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's where some of the flaws are right now.
Yeah.
And in understanding, being able to have a computer
It's a good analogy.
derive that pragmatic enrichment. I'm just using this term a lot, but
it's the computer is getting all input information in text format. But if you have really good domain expertise, and what some of the hedge funds are using right now is like they're figuring out computer programs that can figure out the speed at which people are talking, like their pace. And if they take inputs from thousands of investor calls, including individual investors doing it over and over again, and then seeing at what speed are they talking, right? And then they have the outputs, right? They know what the stock price is and how it changed after that call. They're able to make predictions off that, and that is crazy. It's so cool, but we're still not at any kind of general AI that can do it on its own. We still need tons of domain experts like linguists, and just other smart people who.
Not even just in AI though.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen like Grammarly, this is a really good example too. There's so many applications of natural language processing because everything at its core is a natural language input.
Yeah.
You know, our conversation, this is natural language as we use it.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so utterly important to have the concept of natural language understanding to be able to be successful in an industry like this.
Yeah.
Because a lot of natural language processors, or I guess computational linguists right now, are very much so how they are with the comp sci background, and not so much the linguistics background, or have just the linguistics background and not the comp, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so bringing it back to this idea of pragmatic enrichment, which I've mentioned like at its core, which I probably should have said before, very briefly and very concisely, is deriving non-literal meanings from something deeper within text.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're deriving this more, behind the curtain kind of meaning, and that's where I like to say that linguistics comes in my general life. You know, it could be applicable in anything. But yeah, and I would say, so there was a company I was trying to work for this summer called Prattle, recently acquired startup based out of St. Louis. They used natural language processing to kind of analyze 10Ks, 10Qs, whatever it is, like filings or text or investor calls or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, investor calls. Oh, the transcript of investor.
The transcript of investor calls. Anything, any text. They were using text to derive sentiment analyses about prospective things, so that they could predict market movements.
And sentiment analysis, by the way, would just be like
yes, no,
good, positive or negative. It could be done through the same kind of supervised learning system with grouping and cross entropy and so forth.
Right. And so this is a direct example. This company is so cool. I just ended talking to them. They're awesome. By the way, the guy who founded it, WashU alum, great guy.
Nice.
Super just fascinating topic about how natural language processing is applicable in the context of business and investing.
Yeah.
Particularly in quantitative finance.
Yeah.
Understanding like this is a deeper meaning that we can derive, and there's no person like there's no competition between obviously computers and people. Computers are inherently better at computing, and they're lacking this common sense still, but like they're learning to get there.
When you say inherently better now,
right?
But 30 years ago,
right. There's no competition. But I mean, even today, if we have some person go through 1,000 records and mark down everything and all the stuff.
Yeah, there's no
competition.
No
the
competition.
Computer would go through. Obviously, the computer is faster. Yeah. However, it would just miss stuff.
It would just miss any deeper level things that wasn't specifically coded to do. And I think that's one of the themes that like, and if
Also, let's try another chocolate.
have another chocolate and then
There's two of these.
perfect. Okay, I'll have one later.
Okay.
I'm good for right now, but maybe I'll finish on this, and I would like to hear your take also. But I think people worry a lot about the general AI that's going to come and take over the human species, and I'm not saying that's not going to happen, and I'm not saying it's not going to happen soon, but there still need to be a lot of leaps for that AI system to be able to get there, because right now there's only narrow AI, and they really can only work successfully in the domains that they were structured to work in. But the ballgame will be completely different if things like NEAT advance to the point where they could work not just for a Mario game, but for much more complex systems, and then eventually for the world as a whole, and understand the world as a whole. And if you can put something like NEAT with really powerful hardware and the ability to observe, take inputs on the world around us, I think that's how you can achieve some type of general intelligence. And then, we could have all sorts of other conversations about singularities or the combination of, quantum consciousness, quantum physics, convergence with general relativity. Quantum computing might help us get there. We have, there could be a lot of things that we could get to if that type of thing happens, but I think,
I would love to. I didn't mean to cut you off again.
Yeah, no, I was rapping.
I would love to further explore these concepts with you and talk about anything and everything, and consciousness and personal kind of discovery and all that other stuff, as well as obviously this academia. This whole exciting new realm. I could talk about this, like I said, I read a textbook.
It's amazing.
I just think it's
perfect.
so interesting.
I was having, and I hope the listeners were as well, but I was having a wonderful time just sitting back and hearing you on linguistics.
I do want to say, I want to leave you, if anyone's watching, leave you with a theme, a concept that is also quite interesting to think about when you think of artificial intelligence. You think about the Alexas in the series of the world, and a Google Home or an Alexa in your house is constantly recording. Right? And there have been all of these ethical arguments about, should that be allowed, or is that okay that they do that? But we just talked about how machine learning models and these techniques for artificial intelligence to get better and to optimize our lives and to help our lives get better, they need this just huge data set, right? And the world is driven by data. And so I wanted to leave you with this theme is, as AI moves forward and as the world becomes more data driven, where is the ethical middle ground that we can find, right? And
that's a good ending point, questions to consider and jumping off point for future conversation.
There's no answer. That's the answer.
As with most things in philosophy, there's no answer, but I think with that we'll wrap. This has been Having Lunch. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
That's a wrap.